welcome to Up and About. I'm your host, Eniola Lunge. On Up and About, we actively pursue the development and the prosperity of the African continent. And the show is positioned as a transgenerational show. This means that we'll be sitting with business leaders across diverse experiences in their industry and just, gleaning what they have taken years of experience to gather. On this episode, we will be focusing on therapy and counseling. And to help me do that, I have two amazing ladies with me in the studio today. So without further ado, let's make welcome our first guest for today, Mrs. Funmi Johnson.
Funmi Johnson focuses on helping women heal from trauma and empowering them to live their best lives. A lawyer with 17 years post-qualification experience, as well as a qualified life coach, Funmi developed domestic violence training and delivered training to police, prosecutors, and NGO staff. Funmi draws on her extensive experience as a lawyer and policymaker to offer a unique service for each client. She holds a master's in managing equality and diversity, as well as a certificate in coaching from the OCM Group Limited.
Let us now make welcome our second guest, Olabisi Usidame.
Olabisi Usidame is an experienced classroom teacher, trauma therapist, and professional counselor with a demonstrated history of working in the education management industry. She is skilled in team building, strategic planning, social media, research, and community development. She has a professional degree from the University of Nottingham and obtained her undergraduate degree in estate management from the University of Lagos. She is presently studying for a master's degree in innovation in education from the University of South Wales and is currently enrolled with the Association of Psychological Therapists in the United Kingdom.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
We have a lot of things to talk about. We are going to really go into what therapy, what counseling is all about, and how you as a business person or how you as somebody who's looking to start a business can actually begin to pursue a business or a career in either therapy or counseling. So yeah, do not go anywhere. We have more for you on Up and About today, but we'll be right back after the short break. Welcome back. This is still Up and About. My name is Eniola Lunge, and in the studio with me I have Olabisi Usidame along with Funmi Johnson to talk about the therapy and counseling space in Nigeria. So first of all, I want to ask you, why did you choose to go into therapy first, Olabisi, and for Funmi, why did you choose to go into counseling? Let's go.
Okay. All right. So for me, mine came from my childhood experiences.
Okay.
So I sort of went through, a phase in my childhood where I experienced complex trauma, and I didn't quite know what it was at that time, and I thought I was fine. And so what I focused on, and I still focus on, is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. And as you know, therapy means treatment, and so we take these children and their parents, because it's usually conjoint parent and teacher, parent and child sessions where we assess the child to see what level of trauma the child has experienced, and then know how we're going to set about our component-based therapy to help the child move on from that experience and face it. We cannot erase the past, but we can help a child to move on from the past, remove the guilt, remove the pains, and just face life and enjoy life to the maximum.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question for that, but let's hear from me first.
How did I get into it? Well, I've probably always done counselling in one form or another. I just didn't attach a label to it. But I started doing it formally after I stopped working as a prosecutor. I used to be a prosecutor, and my specialist area is domestic abuse. And I was finding that I would meet the victims of my case. Maybe if I was lucky, I would meet them an hour before the case. and I would be wanting to prepare them for trial because that's why they would be there. And they had all these questions for me, often not really related to what was going to be happening in court that day, but just general questions. Questions like, what is going to happen to my partner? I don't want my partner to go to jail. Can I tell the court about this? Can I tell the court about that? And I found that whilst I enjoyed being a prosecutor, whilst I enjoyed, pursuing justice for the cases, I wanted to deal with the women more. I wanted to speak to the women more. I wanted to help the women more directly. So when I found myself on my way back to Nigeria in 2012, I thought this is the time to make that leap, which is then when I got into coaching. And I find here that when I tell people I'm a coach, they say yes, and then they proceed to ask for counsel. So, this is how it is. So coaching, counseling, it all kind of started formally in 2012. And I think of trauma as a wound, really, an unresolved trauma as a wound that hasn't healed. And we all know that when you have a wound that hasn't healed, if you don't treat it, then there's the setting in of infection, which is, I guess, what Bissy is saying when she says that you then begin to see the manifestation of that infection. You see it in people's behavior. You see it in how people relate to other people. So I remember, for example, the first client I had here, she had never labeled what had happened to her as domestic abuse. She knew it wasn't right. And as is typical with many women who have experienced abuse or who are experiencing abuse, she was providing excuses for the perpetrator. She was like, he says that I'm not respectful enough, that if I could just be more respectful, he wouldn't do this, so on and so forth. And so when we talked about everything that was going on with her, and I said to her that having heard everything that you've said, it sounds to me like you are suffering abuse. She couldn't take that. She disappeared for a good 6 weeks. I couldn't find her anywhere. She wouldn't answer calls. She wouldn't turn up for appointments. And when she came back, she said to me that I had never put that label on it. And in my mind, I never saw myself as a person who was being abused. I knew the behavior wasn't right, but I didn't call it abuse. So when I'm working with women, whether through counseling or coaching, the first thing I find it important to do is that we first of all have to accept where we are, because we can't change what we don't accept. So we first of all have to accept where we are. That's not to say that we will remain where we are, but we must accept it.
Definitely.
Otherwise, we won't be able to change it. So that's how I kind of got into coaching and counseling.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Olabisi, from what you said, I wanted to ask you whether or not you think that as a prerequisite in primary schools, in secondary schools, we should have actually the CBT test, given out. But before you answer that, we're going to go on a quick short break and we'll be right back.
Whether we admit it or not, whether we agree to it, quite a number, because we don't have data, so I cannot put a specific percentage to that, but quite a number of Nigerians are suffering trauma.
Did you know? 1. Worldwide, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health issue in any given year. 2. You are more likely to experience mental illness than you are to develop heart disease, diabetes, or any kind of cancer. 3. Depression affects 350 million people worldwide. 4. Research points to a strong stigma surrounding mental health disorders, a cultural mindset that often prevents people from seeking treatment. 5. Therapy is not that expensive. There is a range of price offerings available. Now you know.
Alright, welcome back. This is still Up and About. My name is Eniola Lunge, and in the studio with me I still have the two amazing women, one in therapy, the other in counseling. And we have Funmi Johnson and Olabisi Usidame. So before we went on the short break, I was asking Bissy whether she thought that we should introduce CBT tests as a prerequisite or a compulsory thing that all the children must go through and must.
Oh yeah, for me that's a huge yes. because that's one of my driving forces at this time. Um, Whether we admit it or not, whether we agree to it, quite a number, because we don't have data, so I cannot put a specific percentage to that, but quite a number of Nigerians are suffering trauma, whether primary, whether secondary, or, second hand, or, you faced it, and you experienced it firsthand. And children are usually offset of, traumatized children sometimes are offset of traumatized parents. Parents who, who have unresolved
Like you say,
trauma.
that's
Yeah,
a different
because, so you see the way they respond, because they can't process emotions, they can't process a lot of things. They cannot express themselves the way they should. They are still having paranoia based on, when they have similar or they face similar traumatic experiences, and they're like, oh, this is what is going to happen. And so they have near triggers. And so because they live their lives like that day in, day out, somehow they rub this off on the children. The children find themselves being blamed for something they didn't do, or they're just really afraid, or they feel guilty for something they haven't done, and that's when the parents just verbally abuse without wanting to. And I just realized that I can actually help these children. So what did I do? So I applied in a British it's British government recognized school, because I wanted to see how we could implement this in Nigeria. For data protection and all that, I'm not going to mention the school, but it's an international school in Lekki there. And I decided to go into the system. So I did a postgraduate certification from a UK university, master's, just so that I could see if I could merge psychology and education together. And so I wouldn't say I used the kids as a lab rat, but I began to note and observe individual behaviors in the children, and I began to address them individually. And I saw children who were struggling academically just ace all subjects,
wow.
express themselves with confidence, begin to initiate collaboration with people. And I'm like, no, what is going on here? And I've seen it year in, year out. And I'm like, okay, so now it really can work. You can really take this knowledge, this skill, you can actually train teachers, you can actually encourage there to be like a therapeutic assessment for children you feel are experiencing some sort of emotional difficulties or behavioral difficulties. And that's what I did. So I started to do more of merging and all of that. And I tell you, we need to sensitize and create awareness, not just with parents, not just with the government, but also with the school community about the impact of therapy, trauma therapy for children. Each child, if given the best environment, can think wide, can think deep, can analyze, can evaluate, can create things that you would not expect from a young child.
For me, what would you say the government or people, policymakers, can do to make sure that people are aware, or women in particular, are aware that wrong treatment is not right, and not to accept what is not right?
I have to say that I've been impressed with the way awareness has been raised recently about sexual violence, about domestic violence. But what I would say is that it's still quite patchy because it depends on the state you're in. There are a couple of states that have really good responses, and then there are other states where it doesn't seem to exist at all. But there is a difference between having a response and having people tap into that response. And I think that society is often one of the fiercest guardians of traditions that are not helpful to people within that society. And within society, the subset of women, we are often the fiercest guardians of traditions that are harmful to other women. So, for example, if As a woman, you complain about treatment from your husband. Depending on who you speak to, they say, well, we all go through it, just deal with it. Men will be men, so on and so forth, face your children, so on and so forth. Yes, that's true. But how well do we go through it? So as Bissy says, people are given that advice, just get on with it. But they're really not getting on with it very well. We're seeing people manifesting that aggression in the workplace, people manifesting the aggression in schools, people manifesting aggression everywhere. And as she also said, often they've forgotten the root cause of that aggression. So now you hear people saying, I'm just an angry person. I can't change. It's my character. But they don't realize that something caused that initial wound. And the human brain is very sophisticated. So it will do all that it can to remove that hurt from you. Sometimes that means repressing it. Other times it means just turning it into something else that you no longer think about. So often people can't get to the root of what causes them to behave in the way that they do. So for me, I think it would be more people talking about it, which is happening already, which is good, but also having sort of open dialogue with children. Because we often assume that between the ages of 0 to 18, children are this blank slate and we put on them what we want to put on them. And miraculously, when they are 18, they will suddenly acquire agency and autonomy and they will live their best life. But that's not how it works. If you stifle a child, you are stifling the adult that they're going to become. We ask people to show initiative, but we spend a lot of time stifling that initiative.
I have a question, but you almost answered it. What I'm going to ask you, but we're going to go on a short break before I ask the question. So don't go anywhere. We're still with Funmi Johnson and Olabisi Usidame. We'll be right back.
As a parent, the first and foremost thing that we have to realize is that the children don't belong to us. They are individuals.
How to succeed in the industry. 1. Surround yourself with successful people. 2. Learn the skills you need to be successful. 3. Don't water down your clinical effectiveness. 4. Learn to be articulate. 5. Not every client is for you. Create a niche.
Welcome back. This is Up and About, and we are still with Funmi Johnson and Olabisi Usidame. Of course, my name is Eniola Lunge, and I'm your host. Okay, so before going on the break, we were talking about, raising children to be curious, to take the initiative, and to just ask the questions that are burning on their mind. So now I want to ask as a final question, what do you think, both of you, what do you think parents can do in order to ensure that we raise the future generation of entrepreneurs?
I think for me, I would say that as a parent, the first and foremost thing that we have to realize is that the children don't belong to us. They are individuals. And we have the privilege of parenting them for a season. And our job is not to command them. It's not to force them into the mold that perhaps we want them to be in. Because I know that there are parents out there who perhaps have felt like they've lost their opportunity to do something. And so they want their children to do that. Never mind that their children are not inclined to do that. They just think, I wanted to be a doctor, I couldn't be a doctor, you go off and be a doctor, even though the child faints at the sight of blood, So I think first and foremost, we have to realize that they're not our property, that we get to steward them for a period of time. And it looks different at different times in life. When they're younger, we have to do a bit more stewarding. But as they get older, we have to learn not to be afraid of letting the strings go. We have to begin to do that very delicate push-pull of saying, okay, I'm letting the rope out. You have more responsibility now. I'm going to step back a bit. You can do this. You are capable of doing this. You do it. You're not going to get it right, first of all, but keep doing it. And I think as a parent, that requires for us to be vulnerable, to understand that So vulnerability, and I think also compassion.
Definitely.
Compassion. We must learn to be compassionate. A lot of us are very unkind to ourselves. If we said things to other people that we say to ourselves, we would not be friends with those other people. But you routinely hear people saying to themselves, you're such a stupid person, how could you not know this? But if we were to take a minute to say, you know what, I don't know this, but I can find it out. I haven't done that so well. I can do better. Tomorrow is another day. We would find it easier to extend compassion to other people. A lot of us are not compassionate, and we're unable to be compassionate because we've never been compassionate to ourselves. And really, in terms of raising the entrepreneurs of the future, I would say fail, 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 and keep failing until you get it right. Try many different things, and then you will find what it is that you're meant to do. I remember when I started to coach and to counsel, I thought, yes, this is me. I've tried many things, but this is me now. This is where I will be.
At the destination.
Yeah.
I love it. Dizzy.
You know, it's interesting how as parents, we always preach perfection to our children. You be the best that you can be. I was the best, da da da, da da da, da da da, da da da. You know, when my daughter was about 3 or 4, I started to take a close note on her, and I began to see anxiety and worry when she doesn't ace anything. And that scared me. Because I'd always taught her, mistakes are proof you're trying. You don't have to be the best. But I realized she was reflecting me. Because I used to beat myself down when I didn't achieve the things I set out to achieve. And then I realized that, you know what, I cannot keep wanting her to be different without also deliberately making an effort to be different. And when she began to see me make fun of the times I make mistakes and tell her, oops, mommy did it again, you know, and she would smile, and that made me smile as well. So my attitude to inadequacies and failures changed. So I'm not saying I stopped trying to be better, but what I started to do was create a sense of humor around it and work on it. And the moment I started doing that, I just noticed a change, a profound change in my daughter. And what I saw was someone who would want to try anything. Before, she was always afraid of trying because it was always a what if I fail? Mommy, what if it doesn't turn out right? Now my daughter creates things. Okay, so just 2 days ago, she said, Mom, I want to make a piñata. I said, okay. And so she just went to the store, poured out the noodles from the box, and she created that. This is just one of the amazing things. She does just about everything. She thinks about creating everything and anything. And I used to get worried in the beginning, and I would say, no, I'm going to use that. I'm going to need that. If it finishes, that's for the budget for the month. And I would say all of that, and I would see how accounting now would change. So what I started to realize is when I allowed her to do things, you know, test the grounds, I noticed her confidence built, and I noticed that her expertise and skills improved as well. You know, helping a child to look at resources where there are no resources. So my daughter understands budgeting now. She understands this is not in the budget for the month because I am very open. We talk. You know, I let her know, like, look, you're living here now, so you need to understand how things go. And so because of that understanding, when she has an idea of something she wants to work with, she says, Mommy, before you answer, I want to use this because I know that we need that resource until the end of the... But what about this? What about this? That's what employees and employers are looking for. They're looking for someone who is resourceful. They're looking for someone who is thinking outside of the box. They're looking for someone who can bridge the gap between problems and solutions. They are looking for all of this. And it's not going to come, like she said, it's not going to come when the child is 18. It's not going to come when the child is 19. Because as you know, in Nigeria, we do not have entrepreneurial classes for people. People come out and they're hustling. So you just end up doing what you don't want to do, and you're now trying to find your way back to where you should have been or started from. And so this is what I'm doing. So I said, look, test the grounds. You want to do ballet, do ballet. You want to do this. Just have fun, because I am of the opinion that everything links together. all our experiences linked together, all of our knowledge linked together. At some point, you will find what you want, what you need. But don't let's box. See, when we start boxing them now, we cannot expect future
So
entrepreneurs.
what I can hear you say is that, encourage the resourceful spirit with your
Yes,
children.
absolutely.
Encourage them to take the
Create
initiative.
and be creative.
Be open yourself to their own creativity. Don't shut them down. When they come to you with the ideas that they're working on, when they ask you questions, even if you don't know the answer, both of you can go and
figure it out
together.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's a great idea. So we are almost done with the show, but we just want to play a quick game.
Okay.
So I don't know, have you played Taboo before?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
So it's like charades, but
Okay.
it's with words.
Okay.
So there is a word. So I'm going to try to get you guys to guess what I'm saying. So there are three options. So the person that gets 2 out of 3 is the winner.
Okay.
Are you ready? So at the moment, there is COVID in town. So if you want to check if you have COVID, you get what?
Check. Tested.
The noun, just the noun.
Just the
The
name.
Oh,
noun
Yeah.
or the verb.
Of that.
Oh, tested. Test.
Correct.
Okay. And you stole that
Sorry.
Okay. So when you are in the office and you're having a headache, it means you're what?
from me. Unwell.
So what you just be saying this? Okay, say the answer real quick.
Stressed. Tired.
The answer, you said the first one, but the noun.
Stress.
Again. Correct.
I'm not good at this game.
I'm
I'm not good at this game.
Let's just go for the last one.
And I'm upset.
Sorry. Are you stressed?
No.
Okay, so the last one is, so if you go and visit your grandma and she on the top part, what do people who are advanced in age have on the top parts of their bodies?
Wrinkles.
Why?
I have never done this game before, so it's not like I have an experience. I'm just doing a guessing.
Wrinkles on the top of their...
Because I can't say face, I can't say skin, I can't say old.
How bizarre. Okay.
Interesting.
Wrinkly
good.
old people with headaches.
Oh my god, okay. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me on the show today.
Oh my word.
I really appreciate that you came to
Thank you.
just talk to us. And I'm sure that parents out there watching this will be able to better, guide their children. And like, Funmi said, we don't own the children, or they don't own the children, not any children. They don't own the children, and just guide them, encourage them, and just inspire the entrepreneurial spirit that they have within them. Alright, so that's all the time we have on the episode today. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel.